Act 1. Introduction to Crisis. Imagine a state where vast natural resources once ensured prosperity now contribute to fiscal fragility. The story we are about to tell is not just one of numbers and charts, but a narrative of vulnerability, warning, and urgency. Picture a nation where states that once prided themselves on resilience now face an uncertain future, teetering on the precipice of economic collapse. Within the next few minutes, we will embark on an investigative journey through the top 10 U.S. states most at risk as the economy crashes, driven by high debt, rising unemployment, and political instability. Our journey begins with an exploration into the alarming economic indicators that have set the stage for a potential crisis. An economic downturn is not a specter confined to financial markets or distant policymakers. It is a tangible, foreboding presence that impacts communities, alters livelihoods, and challenges the very foundations of society. The evidence is compelling. Mounting public debt, overstretched social services, and a growing chasm between fiscal reality and promised prosperity. Each state carries its own unique vulnerabilities, and today we will uncover how these specific issues have positioned them at the front line of an impending collapse. Alaska, for instance, has been defined by its heavy reliance on oil revenues, accounting for an astonishing 85% of its general fund income. Over the past several years, declining production and volatile oil prices have forced the state into repeated budget crises. As the lifeblood of its economy dwindles, the state finds itself on the edge, struggling to sustain public programs and services that millions of residents depend upon. Here, the promise of abundant natural wealth is overshadowed by the stark reality of economic instability. Next, we turn our attention to Louisiana. Imagine a community where more than 18% of residents live beneath the poverty line, their lives a constant struggle against economic hardship. In Louisiana, the foundation of the state's economy is built on oil and gas, a double-edged sword that has brought both wealth and risk. Natural disasters like hurricanes further compound these vulnerabilities, pushing an already fragile economy to the brink. With each storm, the state's fragile recovery efforts are set back, deepening the cycle of poverty and uncertainty for its people. Act 2. Deepening analysis and escalating tensions. Our investigation now moves to Mississippi, a state that has borne the weight of economic hardship on its rural shoulders. In Mississippi, nearly 1 in 4 residents lives below the poverty line. The consequences of this poverty extend far beyond balance sheets. They are felt deeply in every community where failing infrastructure and limited access to healthcare leave long-lasting scars. For many in Mississippi, the reliance on federal aid has become both a lifeline and a crutch, one that could evaporate when the nation's economic tides shift. In these rural expanses, the struggle for survival is acute as outdated systems fail to keep pace with modern challenges. Transitioning to a state known for its urban dynamism, we encounter Illinois. Underneath the veneer of a prosperous economy and a skyline dominated by Chicago, Illinois grapples with a monumental financial dilemma. The state faces more than $211 billion in unfunded pension liabilities, a staggering figure that clues us into the underlying crises of fiscal mismanagement and unsustainable economic policies. High taxes have not translated into improved public services, and as residents seek better opportunities elsewhere, a cycle of outmigration deepens the state's economic woes. Illinois stands as a poignant example of how appearances can be deceiving, revealing an economic fragility hidden behind economic might. Nevada, with its fame built on glittering casinos and the vibrant pulse of entertainment and hospitality, dances on a similarly precarious tightrope. Over a quarter of Nevada's workforce is employed in tourism-focused industries. With such an acute dependency on visitor spending, a downturn in tourism spells disaster. The state's lack of an income tax means that when revenues shrink, there are fewer resources to support public services and infrastructure. Nevada's plight is a stark reminder that prosperity built solely on fleeting consumer trends is inherently unstable. As we delve deeper into regions shadowed by historical dependency on fading industries, West Virginia emerges as both emblematic and cautionary. This state has long been intertwined with coal mining and traditional energy production. However, the long-term decline of these industries has left West Virginia exposed to a future where economic diversification remains an elusive promise. High poverty rates and crumbling infrastructure combine to magnify the risks, marking the state as particularly susceptible in times of broader economic distress. The story here is one of forgotten potential and missed opportunities. A community that once soared on the back of industrial might now struggles under the weight of its vulnerabilities. Shifting our focus to the Pacific Northwest, Oregon presents a unique case where international commerce meets domestic uncertainty. The state's economy leans heavily on international trade, with nearly a quarter of its gross domestic product tied to global markets. Yet, this interdependence is also a gateway to unforeseen risks. Approximately 14% of Oregon's trade is with China, a reminder that turbulent global relationships can have a significant ripple effect on local economies. As trade tensions simmer and global uncertainties grow, Oregon's reliance on international markets emerges as both its strength and its potential downfall. North Dakota, once buoyed by a robust oil boom, is now a state in retreat. Economic contractions, exemplified by a 0.7% decrease in GDP last year, paint a sobering portrait. As oil prices decline, the resulting drop in production reverberates through the local economy. The optimism of an oil-rich past gives way to the harsh reality of a market that no longer supports unbridled growth. North Dakota's struggles reflect the broader narrative of an economy in transition, one where reliance on a single commodity leaves behind a trail of financial compromise. Our penultimate stop is Rhode Island. Despite its small size, Rhode Island is not immune to the pitfalls of economic precariousness. Historically marked by sluggish economic and job growth, with modest gains of 3.2% in GDP and a 1.1% increase in jobs, the state's deep reliance on federal funds poses its own set of challenges. When federal budgets tighten, Rhode Island finds itself scrambling to balance its books and safeguard the welfare of its residents. The narrative here is one of a state standing on the brink, hoping that a more diversified economic portfolio might secure a more stable future. Finally, we arrive in Kansas. Known for its agricultural might, Kansas now confronts economic headwinds that threaten its long-held identity. With an economic growth rate of just 1% over the past year, the state faces a confluence of challenges: tight credit conditions, plummeting land values, and volatile crop prices. Agriculture, once the unwavering backbone of the state's economy, now finds itself at the mercy of global market forces and local economic pressures. Kansas exemplifies how traditional sectors, when confronted with modern economic realities, struggle to maintain their historical significance in a rapidly evolving landscape. Act 3. Resolution and Reflective Conclusion. At the heart of our investigation lies a sobering truth. Economic instability is not a distant inevitability, but a present and pressing challenge. The states we have examined today each serve as a microcosm of a larger national crisis. They are defined not just by their economic statistics, but by the stories of real people whose lives are upended by systemic vulnerabilities. From Alaska's rocky reliance on oil, to Louisiana's perennial fight against poverty and nature's fury, to Mississippi's battle with crumbling infrastructure, each state has its own narrative of struggle and survival. Illinois, Nevada, West Virginia, Oregon, North Dakota, Rhode Island, and Kansas all have been caught in the maelstrom of economic challenges magnified by inadequate policy responses and historical legacies of dependency. The conflict we have traced throughout this documentary is one of forewarned collapse, where once thriving communities now face the risk of financial failure and social disruption. In each state, the signs are clear. reliance on a narrow economic base, unsustainable fiscal practices, and vulnerabilities that have been building over decades. As voices from expert commentators and economic analysts remind us, the potential cascade of economic failure is not only a theoretical model, but a real possibility that demands immediate attention. We conclude our exploration with a call for mindfulness and preparedness. The narrative of economic collapse is not one that spells inevitable doom. Instead, it is a prelude to potential reform and necessary change. It challenges us to confront the realities of our economic systems and to take personal and collective responsibility for shaping a more resilient future. The vulnerabilities of these states are symptomatic of broader trends, a reminder that the stability of our communities is interlinked with the policies we support and the accountability we demand from our leaders. In these moments of reflection, we invite you to step back and consider the layers of complexity inherent in our economic landscape. The indicators we have discussed, ranging from high debt and unemployment to the nuanced ramifications of political decisions, are not abstract numbers. They represent communities, families, and futures that are at risk if proactive measures are not taken. This investigative journey is a clarion call to understand the roots of economic vulnerability. We must ask ourselves, how can we better support the diverse economies of our nation? What lessons can we learn from these states that now teeter on the brink of collapse? And importantly, how will we shape our future in response to these warnings? As we draw this exploration to a close, let the lessons of Alaska, Louisiana, Mississippi, Illinois, Nevada, West Virginia, Oregon, North Dakota, Rhode Island, and Kansas serve as both a warning and a pathway to meaningful action. Each state's challenges underscore the need for holistic economic policies that not only address current disparities, but also build resilience for the uncertain future ahead. Understanding the vulnerabilities of these states is crucial. Stay informed and consider how economic policies impact not just the nation, but your local community.